In the ancient tower of Orthanc, nestled within the verdant valley of Isengard, Saruman the White stood as a beacon of wisdom and power. His robes gleamed like fresh snow under moonlight, a symbol of his role as the head of the White Council. His voice, smooth as silk yet commanding as thunder, could sway even the most resolute minds. To the free peoples of Middle-earth, Saruman was a guardian, a sage whose knowledge of lore and magic rivaled that of the elves. But beneath his pristine exterior, a shadow stirred, a whisper of ambition that would unravel the very fabric of his soul. Saruman's days were spent poring over ancient tomes, his piercing eyes scanning scrolls older than the mountains. He sought mastery over all things, believing that knowledge was the key to order. Yet, in the quiet of his tower, a sinister artifact called to him, a palantir, one of the seeing stones of Numenor. Its glassy surface promised visions of distant lands and hidden truths. At first, Saruman used it to spy on allies and enemies alike, justifying his actions as necessary for Middle-earth's protection. But the stone was treacherous, its visions twisted by a malevolent will far greater than his own. Late one night, as storm clouds choked the stars, Saruman gazed into the palantir. A fiery eye met his gaze, searing his mind with promises of power. "Join me," it whispered, "and you shall shape the world as you see fit." The voice was Sauron's, the Dark Lord whose shadow loomed over Mordor. Saruman recoiled, his pride warring with temptation. He was the White Wizard, chosen by the Vala. How could he bend to another? Yet the seed was planted, and pride, his greatest strength, became his fatal flaw. As weeks turned to months, Saruman's heart grew restless. He began to question the Council's methods, scoffing at Gandalf's wanderings and Elrond's caution. Why should he, the wisest, bow to lesser minds? The palantir showed him visions of armies, of machines that could tame the wild lands of Middle-earth. He saw himself not as a servant, but as a ruler, a mage of many colors, unbound by the constraints of white. The horror of his transformation began not with a single act, but with a creeping doubt that festered in the dark. Saruman's tower became a fortress of secrets. He dismissed his aides, replacing them with orcs and men loyal only to him. The once lush valley of Isengard was scarred by pits and forges, where trees were felled to fuel his growing ambition. His robes, once white, now shimmered with iridescent hues, blues, reds, and golds that danced like oil on water. He declared himself Saruman of Many Colors, a title that mocked the purity he had forsaken. To his followers, it was a sign of transcendence. To those who knew him, it was a warning. The palantir became his obsession. Each night, he locked himself in his chamber, staring into its depths. Sauron's voice grew louder, more insistent, promising dominion over Middle-earth if Saruman would serve. But Saruman, ever cunning, believed he could outwit the Dark Lord. He would use Sauron's power to build his own empire, then cast him aside. This delusion blinded him to the truth. The palantir was a leash, and Sauron held the chain. His experiments grew darker. In hidden chambers, he bred orcs with men, creating Uruk-hai, monstrous warriors born of alchemy and cruelty. The screams of his test subjects echoed through Orthanc, a chilling symphony that drowned out his fading conscience. Saruman justified it as progress, a necessary sacrifice for order. But late at night, when the fires dimmed, he saw their twisted faces in his dreams, their accusing eyes burning brighter than Sauron's. The White Council grew suspicious. Gandalf, ever watchful, sensed a change in his old friend. When he visited Isengard, Saruman's charm was laced with venom. He spoke of alliances, of preparing for war, but his eyes betrayed a hunger that chilled Gandalf's heart. The horror was not in Saruman's words, but in the emptiness behind them, a void where wisdom once resided, now filled with a ravenous desire for power. The turning point came when Saruman openly defied the council. He refused to aid in the search for the One Ring, claiming it was a fool's errand. In truth, he sought it for himself, believing he could wield its power against Sauron. His treachery was cemented when he imprisoned Gandalf atop Orthanc, revealing his alliance with Mordor. The White Wizard was gone. In his place stood a mage consumed by ambition, his soul as fractured as the colors he wore. Isengard became a war machine. Forests were razed, rivers poisoned, and the air grew thick with smoke. Saruman's Uruk-hai marched in disciplined ranks, their armor gleaming under a blood-red sky. He sent them to raid villages, testing their strength and sowing fear. The people of Rohan whispered of a wizard turned demon, a betrayer who had traded light for darkness. The horror of Saruman's fall was no longer a secret. It was a plague upon the land. Yet, even as he built his army, Saruman's mind unraveled. The Palantir showed him visions of defeat, Ents rising from Fangorn, Rohan's riders charging, and Gandalf, now the White, standing against him. Sauron's promises turned to mockery, revealing the truth. Saruman was no master, but a pawn in a greater game. His rage grew, but so did his fear. The mage who once commanded respect now cowered before shadows, his tower a prison of his own making. The climax came at Helm's Deep, where Saruman's forces clashed with the Free People's. The battle was a maelstrom of steel and fire, but it was the Ents' wrath that sealed his fate. They tore through Isengard, flooding his forges and shattering his dreams. Saruman watched from his tower, his many-colored robes tattered, his pride reduced to ash. The horror was not in the destruction, but in the realization that he had brought it upon himself. Defeated, Saruman fled to the Shire, a petty tyrant seeking vengeance. Stripped of his power by Gandalf, he was no longer a wizard, but a wretch clinging to fading glory. His end came at the hands of his own servant, Wormtongue, in a final act of betrayal that mirrored his own. As his spirit dissolved, denied even the solace of the West, Saruman's legacy was one of ruin, a cautionary tale of pride and corruption. The horror of Saruman's fall lies not in monsters or magic, but in the slow decay of a noble heart. He was a man of unmatched intellect, yet he succumbed to the same temptations that plague all souls: pride, envy, and the lure of power. His story is a warning, etched in the annals of Middle-earth, that even the wisest can fall when they listen to the whispers of darkness. In the end, Saruman's many colors were not a mark of greatness, but a shroud for his shame. His tower stands empty, a monument to his failure, while the world he sought to rule endures without him. The White Wizard is no more, and the Mage of Many Colors is but a shadow, a ghost haunting the edges of a story that outlives him.